As I stood in the living room, her phone in my hand, my heart pounding with anger, I looked at the messages that shattered everything I thought I knew. "I'm too beautiful to be tied down like this," she wrote. "The woman I built a life with, sacrificed for, and loved unconditionally, turned me into a convenience, a paycheck to fund her dreams while she find excitement elsewhere." That was the moment I decided enough was enough, truly enough. I will no longer be her safety cushion. I sent her away and started to get my life back. But before we dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe and press the notification bell so you don't miss other interesting stories. The coffee shop was filled with the sounds of students chatting, and the sound of espresso machines echoed everywhere. Jared stood shyly near the counter, clutching the welcome packet, his eyes scanning the menu as if it contained the secret to surviving freshman year. Just as he decided on a simple thing, black coffee, a slight shock pulled him out of his thoughts. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." A voice that was both gentle and confident rang out. "It's okay," Jared stammered, trying to act casual as he wiped the coffee stains off his shirt. "Actually, let me get you another coffee," she said, already moving toward the counter before Jared could protest. She gave him a new cup of coffee. "I'm Evelyn," she said, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Everyone calls me I." "I'm Jared," he replied, feeling his face heat up. "Thanks for the, coffee, Evelyn." Leaning against the counter, she stared. "So Jared, what's your major?" "Software engineering," he answered, realizing how boring it sounded. "And I'm a fashion designer." She smiled as if she knew it sounded impressive. "I'm going to become a world-famous designer. Or at least that's the plan." Jared smiled wryly. "There's ambition. I like that. What about you? What do you dream about?" she asked, tilting her head. Didn't spill coffee on anyone else today?" he joked, making her laugh, which felt like a small victory in the moment. Surrounded by the scent of coffee and the bustling sounds of life starting a new chapter, Jared felt something he never expected. A warm and hopeful spark lit up his idyllic world. The wedding was like stepping into a fairy tale. Sparkling lights danced across rows of glass vases filled with wildflowers, and the gentle sound of acoustic guitar filled the space. Jared stood at the altar, his heart pounding as Evelyn appeared at the end of the aisle, resplendent in a lace dress. She was everything he dreamed of, confident, graceful. When their eyes met, she smiled softly as if to say, "We are together." That day was perfect, like a moment frozen in time, where the world around me disappeared. Jared, filled with joy, leaned in during their first dance and whispered, "I can't believe I get to call you wife." Evelyn smiled softly, resting her head on his shoulder. "Believe it," she teased. "This is just the beginning," and it really was. The first years of marriage were filled with shared laughter, late-night conversations, and dreams about the future. She immersed herself in her budding career as a social media influencer, determined to make her mark. She spends hours curating content, taking photos, and connecting with others in the industry. Jared, her supportive husband, loves to see her passion ignite. "Look, landing deals," Jared exclaimed one evening when he saw her excitedly signing the contract for her first brand collaboration. "We're just getting started, baby," she replied, her face full of joy. Meanwhile, Jared found comfort in the stability of his growing career as a software engineer. He worked long hours, but he never hesitated to drop everything when Evelyn needed him. He admires her determination and believes in her dreams, although he sometimes wonders if her goals leave room for their simple moments together. Even so, their love still feels strong, unshakable, but like the shimmering lights on a wedding day. The light of those first years will soon flicker, allowing cracks to form. The change does not come suddenly but gradually, like watching the tide recede without realizing how far it has gone. Jared realized it first during their date. The previously cozy evenings of eating and drinking together have now become times when Evelyn only focuses on the shooting angle and lighting. "Take this," she said, handing Jared a ring light. He had to endure it. The plate of food grew colder as she posed for photos. "Okay, just one more," she added, but one always turned into 20. The trips are also worse. Jared imagined exploring new places hand in hand, but Evelyn viewed each trip as a backdrop for content creation. Instead of enjoying quiet moments watching the sunset together, she arranges elaborate photo shoots. Did you see the scene that Jared asked when she saw her eyes glued to her phone? Of course I did, she replied without looking up. I'm sharing it with the fans. Then Evelyn's new gym friends show up. They're striking, comfortable, and unapologetic. First, Jared thinks they're just a weird addition to Evelyn's expanding world, but their impact quickly became apparent. Evenings once spent together now turned into late nights out, and Evelyn came home smelling of tequila and cologne. It's just girls' night, she said. V waving his hand to dispel Jared's worries. He tried to trust her. He wanted to believe that the girl he married was still there, but the cracks grew wider and wider. One night, when he heard her talking on the phone, "He's fine, just a little boring." Evelyn's voice echoed through the thin walls of the bedroom, and Jared stood still. Boring. The word echoed in his mind, sharp and cold. Is she talking about me? Is she lying in bed? His mind was flying. He recalled the laughs, the tequila, the moments, and now, doubt began to creep in, like an uninvited friend. The feeling of restlessness grew in his heart. Faith seemed to become more difficult to hold. The house was strangely quiet. Only the sound of water running in the shower could be heard. Jared sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Evelyn's phone on the bedside table, his heart pounding, each beat stronger than the last. He didn't want to intrude on her privacy, didn't want to believe the suspicions that had been nagging at him these past few weeks, but there was something about her behavior, the late nights, the phone that was always on. Stick close to you. The sarcastic laugh made him feel like everything was falling apart. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone. Her PIN code remained unchanged. When the screen lit up, a wave of regret came but was quickly drowned out by a wave of determination. He opened the message, scrolling through mundane content until his eyes landed on a group chat called Fit Queens Unite. What he read next was like a punch in the stomach. Messages mocking him for being so boring and stiff filled it. He didn't even pay attention to a written message. There are some laughing emojis. Girl, you deserve better. Live a little. Another person got involved. Jared's grip on the phone grew more tense as he continued to scroll down, his breathing becoming shallower. Then he saw the flirty text from someone named Ryan, and his chest tightened as he read the funny stories between them, their plans to meet, and the photo of Evelyn in the black dress she'd worn the week before. Not obvious, but close enough to leave no doubt. Honestly, he didn't know Evelyn had texted earlier in the evening saying, "I'm too beautiful to be tied down like this." Jared's world spun. He dropped the phone on the bed and buried his face in his hands, trying to breathe. Why would she say those things about you? About us? She put the sleeping girl back in that position, then looked straight up at the gloomy sky. His mind raced, searching for a reason, any reason to make this less painful. But those words were clear and cruel, cutting off any hope of misunderstanding. His stomach turned as he whispered, "This is who she became, who I gave everything to." He wanted to scream and throw the phone away, but he couldn't move. His hands were shaking as he picked it up again, taking screenshots of the messages. He didn't know what to do with them, but knew he needed proof. The sound of the shower turning off startled him. He quickly put the phone back on the nightstand, his heart pounding loudly as he sat motionless on the bed. When Evelyn came out, singing a tune while wrapped in a towel, Jared couldn't bear to look at her. "Good night," she said comfortably, as if it had never happened. Jared lay on his back looking up at the ceiling, his chest heavy with betrayal and brokenness. The truth could no longer be denied. The woman he loved, his wife, had disappeared, replaced by someone he no longer recognized. The living room was dimly lit. The streetlights outside cast long shadows on the wall. Jared stood near the sofa, his arms crossed tightly, the screenshots from Evelyn's phone imprinted in his mind. His jaw clenched when he heard her humming. Along the hallway, her relaxed expression was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside him. When Evelyn walked in, still scrolling through her phone, Jared's voice cut through the silence. Explain to me why Ryan thinks it's okay to text you like that. She froze, her smile fading instantly. What are you talking about? She asked, sounding defensive. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Jared reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and held the screen towards her, displaying suspicious messages. Evelyn's eyes widened, and she took a step back. You looked at my phone? She exclaimed, her voice rising in disbelief. That's an invasion of privacy. Jared laughed bitterly, his voice filled with anger. Are you worried about privacy? You've destroyed the trust between us, Evelyn. Trust is the foundation of everything we've built. Her face turned white and she stammered, Jared, it's not what you think. Those messages were just a joke, harmless. Jared's voice shook with anger. Are you kidding? You called me boring, made fun of me in front of your friends, and even met Ryan. Do you think I'm stupid? Evelyn's defensiveness melted into despair. I can explain. No, Jared interrupted, his tone hard. You have no right to explain, no right to change course. Everything. I tried my best to support you, to believe in you, and this is what I got in return. Evelyn looked up, tears welling up in her eyes, but Jared was unmoved. Jared, please, she whispered. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to let it go. Things go so far. Stop, he said coldly. You didn't mean to let things go so far. It's really like that, isn't it? She came closer, reaching out her hand, but Jared stepped back. His voice was now steady, full of determination. Pack your things, Evelyn. You have to leave tonight. Her mouth opened, tears welling up in her eyes. You can't be serious, Jared, please. We can fix this. No, Jared said firmly, without wavering. You've already hurt us. I can't continue. He took a suitcase from the closet and began throwing her things into it. Evelyn stood motionless, her sobs filling the space between his movements, each of his items. Packing everything up was like adding another nail to the coffin of what they once had. Jared, she choked out, I love you. He stopped for a moment, turned his back to her, slowly took off his wedding ring and placed it on the table, his eyes hard and determined. You can't say that again. When he finished packing, Jared took out his phone and called an Uber. You can stay at your mom's, he said flatly. I'll send you the rest later. The car arrived just a few minutes later. Evelyn hugged her suitcase tightly, tears falling. Tears streamed down her face. Jared, please don't do this. He didn't answer, but beneath the pain there was something else, a glimmer of freedom, small but undeniable. It wasn't the ending he wanted, but it was the ending he needed. The next morning after Evelyn left, Jared sat at the dining table, holding a cup of hot coffee. The silence in the house is both alienating and liberating. For the first time in years, he had the space to think, really think, without the noise of chaos from Evelyn. But when he passed by, the screenshot on his phone shows the anger simmering inside. This isn't over, not yet. By mid-morning, he had made an appointment with a lawyer. Sitting in his plush office, Jared laid out everything. The screenshots, the group chats, the messages with Ryan. The lawyer, a calm and methodical man, nodded as he reviewed the evidence. This is solid evidence, the lawyer said as he put down the papers. We have enough to protect your assets and build a strong case. Given her behavior and public antics, it will be difficult for her to defend. Otherwise, Jarrett feels a bit relieved, because for so long he's been the one to clean up Evelyn's troubles, but now she has to face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Evelyn returned to her familiar weapon, social networks. Her Instagram feed became a collection of mysterious posts, each more dramatic than the last. A photo of her looking dreamily out the window is captioned, "When love turns into control, it's time to set yourself free." A selfie with smudged mascara says, "Betrayed but not defeated." Her fans flooded her posts with words of encouragement, hearts, and supportive comments, but as time passed, the cracks in her story began to show. Jared's silence spoke volumes, and people began to question her side. A comment under her post stood out. "Didn't you cheat on him? Maybe should focus on taking responsibility instead of blaming others." Others also commented and the situation began to change. Sponsors quietly withdrew. and her once large loyal fan base now dwindled. Evelyn's efforts to project an image of herself as a victim backfired. As his court date approached, Jared felt calm and clear. His lawyer prepared very carefully, and the pile of evidence he collected left him no doubt. But as he walked into the courtroom that morning, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety in his heart. Evelyn sat at the other end of the room, her confidence seemingly shaken. She is no longer the same vibrant and shiny person as before. Now she looks pale and tired due to public criticism and financial pressure. Jared couldn't feel sorry for her. If the bed she made herself is not strong enough to win the race, then she must be strong enough to win it alone. The process was quick and neat, and the evidence was clear. Screenshots of text messages, records of her lavish spending, and even her own reckless social media posts. Evelyn's lawyer tries to paint her as misunderstood, but it's a hopeless battle. When the judge made the final decision, Jared felt relieved, as if a burden had been lifted. He retains full ownership of the house. His savings are protected. Evelyn only had the car and some savings left. When the verdict was read, Evelyn looked at Jared with a mixture of anger, disbelief, and something like regret, but Jared did not look back at her. He just nodded to the lawyer and walked out of the courtroom, feeling much lighter than he had in many years. In the days that followed, as if entering a new life, Jared began to reclaim his house. Boxed up the remaining things from Evelyn's world. Ring lights, stacks of delivery boxes. The pile of exercise equipment makes the space feel more empty but clean, like a blank sheet of paper waiting to be filled. Evelyn's life is the complete opposite, seemingly becoming more and more chaotic. She tries to project an independent image, posting inspirational quotes and trying to channel her brand of self-love. But the internet doesn't forget, and her past actions haunt her. Sponsorships disappear, followers decline, and desperate attempts to stay afloat fail. Jared watched it all from the side. Distance is no longer interested in communication. He has nothing more to prove. While Evelyn struggled, he moved forward with his divorce. Jared began to focus on himself, returning to the gym not to seek recognition but to gain peace of mind. Every lift of weights and every step on the treadmill felt like a step away from the man he once was with Evelyn, who was lost in his own darkness and deeper into chaos. Work became another support, and without constant distractions, Jared put all his energy into his career, landing a promotion that not only elevated his status, confidence, but also symbolizes the stability he fought to protect. He also reconnected with old friends, reaching out to people he had been estranged from during his marriage. One night, while drinking, his best friend Adam raised a glass to Jared. Freedom, happiness, and finally finding peace. Jared clinked his glass with a small smile, and for the first time in a long time, those words felt true. Looking back, Jared sees the journey for what it was. A painful, messy, but necessary chapter in his life. It was real, but it felt like betrayal, and now standing on the other side, he realized the greatest victory was not winning the case or seeing Evelyn's facade crumble, but taking back his life and discovering his strength. Strong to start something new. The future belongs to him, and for the first time in years, it feels bright. The days of chaos and suffering were behind him, and Jared finally felt the weight on his shoulders slowly disappearing. For the first time in many years, he woke up every morning with a feeling of peace, not fear. With the chaos and Evelyn's demands, everything became quiet and tidy. Not only did he regain physical space, but emotional space as well. Jared threw himself into taking care of himself with a determination he never realized he had. The gym became his sanctuary, not to punish himself, but to reinvent himself. Every workout, every kilometer on the treadmill feels like a small victory. His body grew stronger, and so did his mind. With each drop of sweat that fell, he left behind the bitterness and resentment that had clung to him for so long. Reconnecting with old friends brought him a sense of joy he hadn't felt in years. At dinner, Adam raised his glass with a smile to peace and quiet. Jared smiled and toasted his glass for new beginnings. Those words mean more than you think. This is not just a congratulation, but a declaration. He is finally free to shape his life the way he wants, without compromise or conflict. Traveling alone becomes a new discovery. Jared packed his bags and hit the road, exploring the places he'd always wanted to go. No camera, no staged shots, just him in the open world on a quiet morning in a small mountain town. He watched the sunrise and realized something profound. He didn't need anyone else to feel complete. For a long time, he put his happiness in the hands of others, but now, he sees that happiness is always within his own reach. Heaven and earth seemed to glow in this new clarity. No longer distracted by Evelyn's troubles, Jared was able to focus entirely on his career. He was promoted not only because of his technical skills, but also because of his leadership abilities. With dedication, his colleagues noticed a change in him, a quiet confidence replacing the hesitant man he once was. Looking back, Jared sees the red flags he ignored and vows to never ignore them again. Evelyn's betrayal was cruel, but it taught him to value himself and set boundaries. He now understands that trust must be built, not given, and that putting yourself first is not selfish but necessary. Bitterness no longer has a place in his heart. Instead, he feels grateful for the lessons he has learned, the strength he once had. The man who once remained silent in the face of disrespect is now gone, replaced by someone who knows his worth and will not accept less. As he sat on his porch one evening, watching the sky turn orange and pink, Jared allowed himself a small smile. Life wasn't perfect, but it was his, and for the first time in years, the future felt wide open, full of hope and possibility. This is his second chance, a chance to live for himself and embrace the freedom he fought so hard for. Looking back, Jared finally sees his journey for what it was. A traumatic but transformative chapter that reshaped his life. He learned the value of trust, not only with others, but also with himself. Self-respect is non-negotiable. Moving forward does not mean forgetting the past, but learning from it. There were moments where the betrayal felt insurmountable, but those moments forged him with a strength he didn't know he had. Now, standing on the other side, he felt victorious, not over Evelyn, but over himself. Previously, he was someone who doubted his own worth, ignored warnings, and sacrificed too much. As J. Herod closes this chapter, he does so with gratitude. Gratitude for freedom, for growth, and for the endless possibilities ahead. He raised his glass to a quiet night and smiled. Life is wonderful,